If you notice you're maybe more cynical than usual, feeling more exhausted than usual, and you feel like your workplace performance has decreased, chances are you might be burning out. you know? And one thing about burnout, so there's occupational burnout, and then there's burnout due to life. People didn't understand the difference between constructive and destructive conflict because conflict is not necessarily bad. It's how you address a conflict situation. So, cut a long story short, I was like, okay, here we go. I'm passionate about uterine fibroids. I'm passionate about empowering people to deal with conflict effectively. What would the business name be? We need to be whole, holistically. And people talk about a whole work-life balance. I now like to say work-life harmony.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chatting with the Experts, the TV show where I promote women from Africa and the Caribbean who have either remained in Africa or the Caribbean, or they now live abroad. At the end of this show, my mission is that you would have learned something because these women, these amazing women, what they do is they share with you their expertise so that you will be encouraged, inspired, and educated about something at the end of the show. Today, I'm going to be talking to a special woman, and we're going to be talking about addressing population health with a unique perspective. My guest is an innovative and out-of-the-box thinker that describes herself in two ways. She describes herself as a doctor of your health administration needs and also as a healer of organizations and employees, one employee at a time. So my guest, this amazing woman, is Dr. Cheryl Okoli. And with that, I want to welcome her to Chatting with the Experts.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm honored and delighted to be here.
Thank you. I say this to all my guests. Thank you for saying yes. I don't take it for granted. Thank you. So, I know that I told our listeners that we're going to be talking about addressing population health with a unique perspective. But I don't think I did. I gave you enough credit by talking about who you are and what you do, because you have such an impressive bio. I thought it would be best if you spoke about yourself or introduced yourself. How about that?
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity once again. And I'm sure our listeners, just so we're all clear, when our dear Miss Paula Okonneh invited me, I was like, I'm not really sure if I meet the criteria for your guest, but you know what? On hindsight, I was like, I'll just share with her audience why I'm here. When I said I didn't think I'll meet the criteria, in the sense that I consider myself a global citizen. Obviously, those of you listening to me can detect an accent of some sort. And so I might jump to some conclusions, but I just want to clear the air in the sense that I am Canadian, born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but I grew up on three continents. So imagine my childhood, or rather my toddlerhood and infanthood was spent in Winnipeg, Manitoba, childhood in Nigeria, and then my teen years in the Middle East, in a country called Qatar. So I am what psychologists, sociologists will call a third culture kid. And I highly recommend you research that at your own time. So I just want to make that a little bit of a disclaimer. So most of my adulthood, and all of it actually, and my professional experience has been in Canada. Okay. So that's the lens through which I'll answer the question posed to me. So who am I? So
Who
yes,
are
I
you?
am.
Yes.
Yeah. So I am Dr. Cheryl Okoli, DHA. I like to add a DHA to remove any confusion whatsoever, in the sense that I am not a medical doctor. but I do have a doctorate, and a DHA stands for a Doctor of Health Administration Needs. So, yes, I do like to describe myself as a doctor that looks after you, an executive or business owner, in your health administration needs. And how I break that down is looking at five different pillars of leadership: workforce development, forging partnerships, the organization culture and climate, and last but not least, financial practices. Okay. So I like to help business owners, C-level suite executives at a high level strategic view of the organizations. The second way I like to introduce myself as well, and this is more recent, just to provide some clarity, a healer of organizations, one employee at a time. I'm all about wholeness. Okay. So when I talk about wholeness, an organization can be whole. You'd be like, that's a little take or perspective. Yes, it's a different paradigm shift altogether. But when I talk about wholeness, I'm talking about how smoothly things run in those five domains I mentioned. How whole is the leadership? How whole is your organization coaching climate? How whole is your workforce? Or do you need to develop them? How is the partnership and how are your financial practices? These all lead to operational productivity. Now, when I talk about healing employees or organizations one at a time, I'm referring to an innovative, and this comes back to the question now, an innovative healthcare model. Let's pause there for a second. When we talk about population health, people mostly think about people with morbidities. So it could be maybe a group of people with hypertension or cancer or stroke or diabetes. Basically, a population is a group of people that have something in common. It could either be in a healthcare context, it has to do with a health related thing. If it's geographically, it depends on where they live, right? So you could say the population of Toronto, the population of Calgary, population of Maryland. So you could look at cities, you can look at states and so forth, right? But talking about the population health lens here, the unique population I want to target are employees. So my main business is called Shalom Eagles Wings, and roughly is divided into three main domains: consultation, advocacy, and empowerment. Under the consultation, I talked a little bit about that in the sense that I cater to executives or business owners or leaders who need assistance in any one of those five domains I mentioned. The advocacy component is targeting or looking at where there are population gaps. Especially in our recent world, in the past 2 or 3 years, healthcare providers have been burnt out. Prior to the pandemic, they were burning out, but it didn't really come to the forefront. But the pandemic brought it to the forefront. But the interesting thing is, when I focused on this population of healthcare providers, the idea was conceived in 2016, whereby I was like asking the question, who takes care of them holistically? And holistic to me means taking care of them physically, mentally, socially, culturally, and spiritually. So remember, 2016, the idea was conceived. It was only more so, I would say, around 2019 to 2022, I felt this sense of urgency. It's time to move. It's time to act. Hence, a new innovative model, I would like to think it's out of the box thinking, and other people concur, is an organization, a business venture that I'm now working on called Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreats. So it caters to the population of healthcare providers in the industry. And when I use the word healthcare providers, think outside the box. I'm not using the HPA as in the Health Professionals Act definition of who a healthcare provider, but just think of it as this way. If you provide care to a human being in any one of these domains, physically, mentally, socially, culturally, spiritually, you're eligible for the services. And what are these services? Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreat is a place of recalibration, a place of rejuvenation, a place where healthcare providers, regardless of setting, so you could be at C-level suite, you could be in research, academia, in the front lines, a place where you are cared for holistically through your physical needs. Yes, there's food and accommodation, mentally and socially. So some of these providers might be experiencing burnout or might have been recipients of bullying and harassment. Mark my words, I use the word recipient. I didn't use the word victim. Some might say semantics, but for me, there's a subtle difference because recipient, I feel is a little bit more empowering than using the word victim. And I'm all about creating hope in people. Okay. So, and also another activity that's provided. So, in terms of workshops, there are workshops like light learning because it's a place of recreation. We want them to rest, right? But nevertheless, I want them to leave being empowered to be positive change agents in whatever setting their work is. So, in that light, so light learning on conflict resolution and also organization development courses. And last but not least, we have two other things. We have group counseling, because I mentioned they might be recipients of bullying and harassment or they might be burning out. And then we also have something called nighttime dream counseling. You're like, what's that? Wow. I
What's
believe
that?
that we should, yes, I believe we should pay attention to our nighttime dreams. Why? Because sometimes you can receive creative ideas, warnings. You're like, how is that so? What if I were to tell you that actually the name Renata for the retreat, I got it in a dream. It's no word of a lie. It came to me in a dream. And I'd never heard that name before. And when I Googled it, guess what it means? Rebirth or reborn. Isn't such an environment of the retreat a place for, when I say recalibration, rejuvenation, it's a place to be reborn in the way you think, to take you back to your workplace or your family to be a better positive change agent. So on that note, I'll pause there for now and entertain any questions you might have because I can go on and on.
Wow. One thing we can see for sure is that you are passionate. You love what you're doing. And as you say, it has come from within you. These are not things that someone told you about. And the question I do have is, Shalom came before the Renata.
Yes, yes. Excellent question. Okay, so I bet you. So Renata, sorry, Shalom Eagles Wings. Yes. So there's the logo of Shalom Eagles Wings. So very good question. So Shalom Eagles Wings was founded in 2014. And why? Twofold. Number one, from a clinical lens, I'm very passionate in raising public awareness for women living with uterine fibroids,
Hmm.
raising public awareness and one-on-one consultation. But on the other hand, too, I am also passionate based on a promise I made to myself and God to empower people to deal with conflict effectively. You ask why? I noticed in my career, and by the way, that I have 20 years of healthcare experience in different settings. Prior to 2014, so I would have been working officially in the workforce as of 2003, 2004. So that would be what, about 10 years prior to Shalom being founded. I've noticed that the way conflict was dealt with in the workplace was, I just said there could be much improvement. People didn't understand the difference between constructive and destructive conflict because conflict is not necessarily bad. It's how you address a conflict situation. So, cut a long story short, I was like, okay, here we go. I'm passionate about uterine fibroids. I'm passionate about empowering people to deal with conflict effectively. What would the business name be? Shalom Eagle's Wings came to me. Shalom in itself, most people know it to mean peace, which is good, which is right, but it also means wholeness and blessings. So do you see with me think how I talk about how I'm all about wholeness of organizations, wholeness of employees with the name Shalom and dealing with conflict that covered that part. And then the Eagles, I actually see myself as a visionary and I'm very strategic in my planning and how I work and practice. And the eagle has very keen eyes, right? And soars above storms. It soars above adversity. I liken that. And one thing people do not know, actually, one of my middle names means eagle. actually means God is my ego. And
Mm.
then the wings component has to do with empowerment. So if you remember, I mentioned Shalom, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but Shalom Eagles Wings about consultation, advocacy, and empowerment. So under the empowerment, the wings nurturing people that come to me for consultation. I'm also a conflict resolution coach. I'm certified with an organization, the Canadian International Institute for Applied Negotiations for their hybrid program. And again, all through my doctorate and academics, I always infused conflict resolution in whatever I was doing, right? Again, to fulfill the promise I'd given to myself and to God. So that's what Shalom Eagles Wings is. So yes, it came before Renata. And under the domain of advocacy would be I'm always looking for how I can advocate for, again, bridging gaps in care, be it for the uterine fibroids or employees' health and wellness. And what's come out of that to some extent is Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreats, to the point that even before it was launched, I actually started a petition, believe it or not, and lots of people signed it. So, what I would love is for the government to recognize the value, even though the health minister of Alberta at the time recognized the value of this retreat idea. He's no longer in office, anyways. But I would love for the government to fund it or for organizations to see the value of this to provide the funding so the employees can attend such a retreat. Yeah.
Wow, what a very vivid explanation on how we got the Shalom's Eagles wings. Did I get that?
Mhm.
And then how you merged it. Because initially I was like, okay, uterine fibroids, connection.
I know.
Then you joined it together. You showed me how they're really interconnected. Love that. But as you spoke, it reminded me of I had a guest, and I mean, most of us have traveled, and on airlines, we hear a lot about, for safety purposes, they say put on your mask first
Yes.
before you put on
Mhm.
the mask of those your loved ones. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what I see you doing with especially the Renata Wellness Recreation Retreat.
Mhm.
You are helping health professionals keep healthy. And burnout is real. It's real.
Yep. Yep.
Mm.
And that things that people don't necessarily recognize when they're burning out. There's a group of authors that I like their take on what burnout is. There are three criteria. Let's see if I remember them off the top of my head. But basically, what they say is if you notice you're maybe more cynical than usual, feeling more exhausted than usual, and you feel like your workplace performance has decreased, chances are you might be burning out. you know? And one thing about burnout, so there's occupational burnout, and then there's burnout due to life. What I mean by that, burnout that's related to your environmental factors, right? It could be maybe increased workload or decreased resources, or you're not being heard. It could be microaggressions, like discrimination, that all lead to burnout from a occupational stance. Or it could be burnout that's multifaceted, that's related to maybe what's going on at home, right? So you could be someone, an employee caring for your young ones, caring for your parents. That's called a sandwich generation because you're
Mhm.
sandwich. Caring for parents, caring for your, right? So that can contribute to burnout. Could be maybe there could be marital issues going on. It could be financial issues. So all of that, because we're holistic beings, right? Physical, mental, social, cultural, spiritual, it's nearly impossible that what's happening at home would somehow overflow to your work life. It's very rare that you separate it, right? So that's why it's best for us to be at our best at home to give our work the best. So one thing I love about Renata too, and one of the things is what I talk about recalibration. I actually have a mnemonic for that. It's all about stopping, especially if you do identify you may be burning out or you think you're at risk for it. You stop and recalibrate, meaning basically start reassessing. Each letter actually means something. I'm not going to go into that here, but the essence of it is this. You stop and ask yourself, what I'm doing right now, is it what I should be doing? What needs to go? What needs to stay? And then also celebrating the good things that you do, the milestone you've reached, right? Eliminating anything that's negative. seeking counsel if you need to seek counsel of other people because we don't know it all, and not to be ashamed if you need that extra assistance. You know what I mean? Because with the mental health, there is that stigma, no
Yes,
matter how we want to deny it, regardless of what part of the world, there's always a stigma associated with mental health issues.
have to
But
say.
post-pandemic, people are a little bit more understanding, is what has been my observation. But there are still some cultures where it's a stigma regardless. But my point is, we need to be whole holistically. And people talk about the whole work-life balance. I now like to say work-life harmony.
Oh, I like that one.
And
Well,
that's a little bit borrowed from someone, so I can
harmony.
take credit, but I'll
Mhm,
prefer harmony versus the balance. But yes, it's still that seesaw, though. I like to think of seesaw. When I talk about work-life balance, I think of a seesaw. Those who's played that game of seesaw.
mhm.
In order for you to be fun, you need to, one person has to go up, the other one has to go down. It's rarely ever horizontal. So in the
And
same way
that's
with
where the
harmony,
harmony. Mm, God.
yes, in the same way it has to be like harmony, like the beautiful orchestra with the different voices. I'm like more of an alto. I'm not saying I'm a great singer at all, but I love harmony, right? So how do you harmonize what's going on in your life with your work and your social life too, right? Yeah.
Important. So I'm listening to this at all. I'm thinking, okay, so these are great things you're doing. How do you operationally, how do they work? You've got the Shalom Eagles. I'm not going to get it right, I know. Remind me. Shalom Eagles,
Wings.
wings above.
Mhm.
I got that. All right. And then you've got the Renata Wellness Recreation Retreat.
Mhm.
Operationally, how do they work? And I'm even more interested. Well, let's answer that one first before I ask the next one.
Okay, how does it work operationally? Do you mean as in how do I balance both?
How do you balance? How do you harmonize? We're going to use the word
There we go. She's
harmonize.
paying attention. How do I harmonize both? Excellent point. Okay. So remember how I mentioned I'm like an eagle. I look at things strategically.
Mhm.
So with the Renata, if you think about it, based on what I'd mentioned, it's sort of an offshoot of Shalom Eagle's wing in terms of the consultational service. The only difference is the application is different. Application is different in the sense that I'm thinking more recreation and fun
Mm.
for the attendees. So with Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreats, right now it's seasonal. It's not all year round. It's definitely not full time. But I would love for it to be full time in due time. So right now, like I mentioned, maybe I didn't. It was launched last year, September of last year, and that's been the only one so far. So this year, I am strategizing how I can harmonize both of them. So for Renata, my hope and desire is to have it at least once a month for
Oh,
about 5 months of the year. And with Shalom Eagle's wings, again, being that strategic and visionary, again, eliminating partners that may not be conducive for my vision and trying to have the right partners for my vision, right? I have no qualms in eliminating. Sometimes no is a very powerful weapon. It's not to be cruel, but it's making room for what you should be saying yes to. So, yeah, so they're both in their infancy stages. So lots of what I've been doing right now is lots of networking in terms of at a micro level and a macro level. Strategic partnerships is what I've been focusing on in the past few months. And yeah.
okay. Now I have better clarity because I was wondering about you and work-life harmony for you. This is not easy. Not easy. Yeah.
Yes.
And so even with the of course the Renata Wellness Recreation Center retreat is the newer of the two businesses. So my question, which I said I was going to come to, was staffing wise, how do you handle that? Because retreats, when we think of retreats, we think of, sometimes solitude, but in a good way. As you say, fun, you know,
Yes.
not work, taking away work and replacing it with something that you enjoy.
Yes. Excellent question. Thank you. So what I'm doing, so I'll answer that in twofold. So right now, so plan A is to have my own physical location, a place, physical location dedicated to running these retreats. Plan B is to rent out spaces, which is
Mm.
what I actually did for the launch. So with that, when I rent out space, it's a venue. So they provide all the meals. They provide the accommodation if needed. They provide all the tools and accessories. All I have to do will be to have my speakers or facilitators. So when you talk about staffing, so for example, what I love to do, I always like to talk about the conflict resolution class and then the nighttime dream time counseling. For the
Mhm.
lunch, I invited a speaker to talk about financial wellness because that's part of organization development because financial
Yes.
wellness can be part of the organization, it could be part of the employee. And then I had a counselor. The plan is to have a counselor to come facilitate the burnout sessions. Okay, qualified counselor. So these are my strategic partners, if you will, for running the retreat. So for me again, and I don't lie, I did most of like the marketing and social. That is not my strong suit. I'm looking forward, and I have been actively trying to see someone take over that role so I can focus on other things. So if you know anyone who's excellent, an excellent VA that can help with lead generations and social media and all of that, why not?
Think I can think of someone. So yeah, we talk about that afterwards. Yes. So this is what I'm hearing about, knowing your purpose and working within your strengths. That's exactly what you're doing. And saying the things that are not your strength, I don't want to say weakness,
Mhm.
because I don't see anything weak connected with you and what you're doing. You outsource. That's some of the secrets behind success of
Yes.
solopreneurs. Yeah, outsource it. Yeah. Wow. I love what you do. I mean, the passion shows all over your face, in your voice.
I do love it. I do.
Yeah, yeah. So before we go, I just, as I heard you as I heard you talking, I mean, of course, I'm thinking, do you have one success story you can, and I know you have many. So can you just give us one success, somebody who you have seen their life change without, I mean, of course, within confidentiality
Yeah.
parameters.
Sure. So with Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreat, I had excellent feedback to the point that the attendees said you should open it up beyond the healthcare providers.
Mm,
That's one feedback I got. They loved the dance class. Like, honestly, you could see the transformation on their faces. They
mm,
were grinning from ear to ear because dancing, I'm a little bit partial and biased. I love dancing. That's why I had to integrate it as part of the recreation. It releases endorphins. It's not just a social activity and it's good for you physically, but also mentally. There was a huge transformation among the attendees. People were
mm.
just smiling and grinning from ear to ear. They
Yes.
loved the nighttime dream time counseling. For
Mm,
some people, they'll be like, oh, that's a little bit different. But for me, that's how I incorporated the spiritual domains. So people loved it. And I had both male and female. So it was very interesting. I did a survey afterwards and seeing the feedback, right? So which shows in that they really did love it. And it's something that I'm on the right track. Yeah. And I with the Shalom Eagles Wings in terms of my consultancy part of things. So I remember there was this business owner. She came to me. She's creating a care facility. And I can't say much, thank you, because of confidentiality. I even don't have her organization listed publicly. I just write confidential. But she came to me with deliverables. But then she said, if this were your own baby, what would you do for it? The
mm,
organization. So that gave me freedom to meet her deliverables, but also say, you know what, I noticed this was missing, but have you considered so and so? For example, the appropriate healthcare model that'll be conducive for what she's creating, right? So
mm.
yeah, so those are some success stories I can share so far.
Wow. Dr. Cheryl Okoli, I mean, you've blown me away with what you're doing. I mean, I know you, but I didn't know all of that part of you. So,
So,
wow. So where can you be found online? If someone listening to this or viewing this wants to know more about you, because work-life harmony is something we all need.
Yes, indeed. Yes. So I am on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Dr. Cheryl Okoli, DHA. I'm there. For my businesses, you're going to notice a trend. So the email for Shalom Eagles Wings is cheryl@shalomeagleswings.care.
I
For
love
Renata
it.
Wellness and Recreation Retreat is info@renata.care. Do you notice something similar? Care?
It
Because
does.
I do care for people, and that's a unique domain as well. So that's how I can reach out. You can contact me via phone. I'm very responsive. I'll check both inboxes and junk mail. And for your information too, just in case, when you reach out to me and when I reach back to you, please always check your junk mail because I have such a unique domain of .care that most emails, it goes to the junk mail. So just an FYI, but I will respond.
I love it. And so I promised you, my viewers and listeners, that every guest I bring on is unique and special, and that you would learn something new. I've learned something new, as I am sure you have. And so if you would like to be a guest on this show, please reach out to me on the contact page of my website. My website is chattingwiththeexperts.com. Oh, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just not Google, but just search for me on LinkedIn, Paula Okonneh on LinkedIn. Or I am also on Instagram. My handle there is at chat_experts, can't speak today, experts_podcast. And this year, 2024, I've decided that Facebook and I should become friends or better friends. I've been on Facebook, but not very active. You can reach out to me on Facebook as well. I really enjoyed having you on, Dr. Cheryl Okoli.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying yes.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you.